October 31st, 2022 Halloween. Two Egyptian workers are clearing rubble in a remote desert canyon 2 miles west of the Valley of the Kings. One of them feels the ground give way beneath his feet. He stops. He kneels. He brushes the sand away. Ancient stone steps, leading down into darkness. What he didn't know yet, those steps led to the most important archaeological discovery in 100 years. When news broke in February 2025, headlines screamed it across every language on Earth. Egypt discovers first royal tomb since Tutankhamun 1922. People imagined what Howard Carter found a century ago. A sealed chamber blazing with gold. A mummy resting in a carved sarcophagus. Treasures stacked floor to ceiling, but when archaeologists reached the burial chamber of Pharaoh Thutmose II, the room was empty. No sarcophagus, no mummy, no treasure, no golden death mask. Just walls. A stone floor buried under centuries of dried mud, and fragments of alabaster so small they fit in a gloved palm. This is the story of a pharaoh so thoroughly forgotten that even his own tomb couldn't hold him. The 18th dynasty was Egypt's golden age. Thutmose I conquered deep into Nubia and Syria. Hatshepsut built temples that still stand today. Thutmose III, her stepson, won 17 military campaigns and expanded Egypt to its greatest empire. And then there was Thutmose II. He was the dynasty's invisible man. He was Thutmose I's son, but not by the chief queen. His mother was a secondary consort, which made him a lesser prince. To strengthen his claim to the throne, he was married to his half-sister Hatshepsut, who carried the more prestigious royal bloodline. He likely became pharaoh as a teenager. His mummy tells a grim story. When the French scholar Gaston Maspero unwrapped the bandages on July 1st, 1886, he described what he found. He had scarcely reached the age of 30 when he fell a victim to a disease of which the process of embalming could not remove the traces. The mummy was thin, shrunken, lacking muscular development. The skin was scabrous, covered in scarring. The skull was partially bald, a sick young king. A wooden staff was found in his tomb inscribed with his royal name, possibly the walking stick of a man too ill to stand without it. He left almost no monuments. When rebellion broke out in Kush, his generals suppressed it. Not him. His building projects were few and modest. Most works credited to him were either started by Hatshepsut or later claimed by other pharaohs. He was overshadowed in life and almost entirely erased after death. After Thutmose II died, his wife became one of the most powerful pharaohs in Egyptian history. Hatshepsut ruled for 20 years. She dispatched trade expeditions to the land of Punt. She erected twin obelisks at Karnak. One still stands, the tallest surviving ancient obelisk in the world. She built her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, a colonnaded masterpiece that architects still study today. Thutmose II was erased the first time by her greatness. He died young. She defined the era. Then, decades after Hatshepsut herself, died her stepson. Thutmose III began systematically destroying her legacy. Her statues were toppled. Her name was chiseled from temple walls. Her face was removed from reliefs. Here's the twist. Where her name was destroyed, workers sometimes substituted Thutmose II's name in its place. The forgotten king was erased a second time by being used as a placeholder for a woman being erased by someone else. he became a ghost twice. And then, for 3,000 years, his tomb was lost entirely. From the 18th dynasty onward, Egypt's pharaohs were buried in a hidden valley on the west bank of the Nile, the Valley of the Kings. By 1922, when Howard Carter cracked open Tutankhamun's sealed door, Egyptologists believed they had found virtually every royal New Kingdom tomb, but one was missing. 27 kings of the New Kingdom had identified original burials. One did not. Thutmose II. His mummy had been found in 1881, crammed with other displaced royal mummies in a secret cache at Deir el-Bahari, put there by panicked priests 3,000 years ago to hide them from looters. But the tomb that originally housed his body, nobody knew where it was. For 103 years, no one could find it. For 103 years, the last missing pharaoh of Egypt's greatest dynasty stayed hidden, until 2 workers felt the ground move beneath their feet. On a Halloween morning, the workers alerted expedition director Piers Litherland, a Scottish archaeologist who had spent years searching this remote canyon system west of Luxor's famous valley. He later described the location as a poorly chosen place beneath 2 waterfalls and at the bottom of a slope. Why would anyone build a royal tomb there? The leading theory: Thutmose II died suddenly. He was sick, young, possibly a teenager. There was no time to prepare a proper site. The tomb was rushed, and the consequences were catastrophic. Within 6 years of the burial, the 2 waterfalls above the tomb sent floods cascading through the wadi. Water poured into the burial chamber. The roof partially collapsed. The walls, still being decorated with the Amduat, the sacred funerary text reserved for kings alone, were never finished. Ancient priests made a desperate decision: move the body. They extracted Thutmose II's mummy, his alabaster canopic jars, his grave goods. They carried everything out of the flooded tomb, and then they went somewhere else. Where? Nobody knows. After 2 years of excavation, removing concrete hard flood debris shovelful by shovelful, Litherland's team finally reached the burial chamber. On the walls, blue paint, yellow stars, the night sky of the ancient Egyptian underworld, still visible after 3,500 years, painted to guide a pharaoh through the afterlife by the priests who never finished decorating the room. On the floor, fragments of alabaster bearing a cartouche, Osiris Ake-Perenre, Thutmose II. Here is where the discovery opens a door instead of closing one. In Cairo's National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, there is a mummy in a glass case. It has been labeled Thutmose II for over 140 years. But Piers Litherland is not certain it is him. The mummy's bones suggest a man approximately 30 years old at death. Litherland argues that the historical evidence, the frail, sick young king, the rushed tomb, the short reign, points to a man who died much younger. His assistant field director, Mohsen Kamal, stated it directly. The possible existence of a second, and most likely intact, tomb of Thutmose II is an astonishing possibility. Think about what that means. No intact royal New Kingdom tomb has been found since Tutankhamun's in 1922. Every significant burial site found since has been looted, damaged, or partially destroyed. But if the real Thutmose II, his body, his sarcophagus, his canopic jars, his burial treasures, was moved by those ancient priests to a second location, and if that location has never been found, then somewhere near Luxor, possibly in the same canyon system, there may be an untouched royal tomb sealed for 3,500 years. The official tally of what was found in Tomb C4 is brief. Fragments of alabaster vessels, pieces of blue-painted plaster with yellow stars, a wooden pole inscribed with a royal cartouche, and the confirmation, for the first time in 3,500 years, that Thutmose II was buried in this wadi. Before this discovery, not a single object in any museum anywhere in the world had ever been definitively linked to Thutmose II's burial. He was the only pharaoh of the entire 18th dynasty for whom that was true. Mohammed Ismail Khalid, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, called it one of the most important archaeological discoveries in recent years. But the discovery's greatest significance may be the question it asks, not the answer it gives. For 103 years, Egyptologists said, "We have found every royal tomb of consequence. The record is complete." 2 workers feeling the ground shift on a Halloween morning proved otherwise. Thutmose II wasn't a great king. He wasn't a conqueror. He wasn't a builder. He wasn't remembered by his own people in the decades after he died. He was a sick young man who happened to hold a throne, overshadowed by a wife who turned out to be extraordinary, forgotten twice. Once by history, and once by deliberate erasure. And yet, here we are, 3,500 years later, and his name on a shard of alabaster was enough to stop a team of archaeologists in their tracks. There is something almost democratic about how history works at its edges. The great pharaohs built colossal monuments to ensure they would never be forgotten. Thutmose II built almost nothing, and he may be the one whose story isn't finished yet. In 1590, the governor of a small English colony on the coast of North America sailed back to England for supplies. He was gone 3 years, longer than planned, trapped by war. When he finally returned to the settlement, he found it completely abandoned. 118 men, women, and children gone. No bodies, no signs of violence, no explanation. Just a single word carved into a wooden post, Kraton. The colony of Roanoke had vanished, and for 435 years, the mystery of where those 118 people went has never been conclusively solved. Until now.